Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Torah Studies. This is our weekly look at the soul of the Torah portion. We have a phenomenal class tonight, and I'm fortunate to be here together with you. Tonight, we study the Torah portion of Toldot, or as the kids' Parashat album that my kids used to listen to would call it, Cold Toes. I don't know, Cold Toes? No, it's Toldos. All right. Anyway, so Torah portion is Toldot, and it is a doozy. If anyone still uses that term, then they will know what I'm talking about. A doozy in the sense that there's so much drama in this week's Torah portion, including, not exclusively, but including the story of the drama of the blessings that were taken by our forefather, our patriarch Yaakov, Jacob. And for so many of us, the question evokes that, for so many of us, the story evokes questions, including how could he steal blessings from his brother? What was the father thinking? Right? All of these types of questions that come up. And the truth is, we are exploring this topic at length in our Sunday morning Kabbalah Cafe sessions. And if you attend Kabbalah Cafe, that's awesome. If you don't yet attend Kabbalah Cafe, join us Sunday mornings for that. But today we're going to go in a bit of a different angle. I mean, it's gonna cross over on some of the elements that we've been exploring in that class, but you don't have to have been at those Sunday sessions to follow tonight, nor will tonight be much of a repetition of those. There's a lot of new things to talk about. So let's kind of jump in to the text. And what we want to do is kind of establish the story of the blessings. Remember, the short story is that Yitzchak marries Rivka, Isaac marries Rebecca, and for a little while they can't, she can't get pregnant, and then eventually she gets pregnant. But when I say her pregnancy is very difficult, and she has so much difficulty that she even says, there's an expression in Torah, it says why did I even want this? It's like sometimes you want something and it's like, did I even know what I was getting into? That's how physically difficult her pregnancy was. So the Torah says at the beginning of the Torah portion that she consults with this prophet. She consults with God, but according to the commentaries, she consults with a prophet of God. And she asks, she says, what's going on? What do I do? What's happening? What does it all mean? And the oracle, the prophet, tells her, it's Shem, actually, the son of Noach, Shem, I believe it was, who tells her, and this is pre-sonogram, basically tells her that the reason why you're struggling so much in the pregnancy is because you are pregnant with twins. It's not one child, it's two. And they represent two different nations, two different kingdoms. When one rises, the other will fall. The elder will serve the younger. And all of that is the origin story of the birth of the twins, Yaakov and Esav, or Esav and Yaakov, known in English as Esau and Jacob. And, the story of their lives, quickly diverge. One is born hairy, one is born smooth. As they get older, the Torah talks about the difference in the personalities. And it culminates in this symbolism of the blessings, the final blessings of their father's life, of Isaac, Yitzchak's life. The question is, who will he give the blessing to? And as we know, he wants to give a blessing to Esau, to Esau. And instead, Jacob takes the blessings in an act of what would we call it? Deception. Yeah, act of deception. Okay, Scott, please take it away. We're going to start with text number 3. Yep, we're being a little bit counter today. Give me a second here. Let me make sure I have the right thing pulled up for our online crew. All right, here we go. I have it ready. This is going to be text number 3. So here we go. Text number 3 describes this attempt to bless his son toward the end of his life. All right, please take it away.
And when Isaac grew old, his eyesight faded, and he could not see. He called Esau, his elder son, and said to him, "My son." Esau said to him, "Here I am." Isaac said, "Behold, if you please, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore please take your equipment, your sword and your bow, and go out to the field and trap deer for me. Make it into a tasty dish for me, the way I like it, and bring it to me that I may eat, so that my soul will bless you before I die.
Okay. And that's it. That was the request. Father calls in his son, the elder of the two twins, and says, bring me some food and I will bless you. Now, of course, the question becomes, why did he wish to bless his son? Now, that might not seem like a provocative question on any level, because why? Who wouldn't want to bless your son? Well, we know he has two sons. And we know that there was Esau, who was the hunter, and Jacob, who was the Ishtam Yoshev Olim. He was the sincere man who was the dweller of tents. Meaning he was stunning. He was literally intensely stunning. Okay. As long as we get some reaction, even if it's negative, I will take it. Right. So he is, he's the studious guy. And yet Isaac wishes to bless Esau. And the question is why? The truth is, the Torah already foreshadows this. Already a few chapters. Remember, just take a look at the source of text 3. It was Genesis chapter 27, verses 1 through 4. If you take a look all the way back, 2 chapters prior to Genesis 25, verses 27, 28, text number 1. We're going back in time to an earlier excerpt that talks about the coming of age of Esau and Jacob, the twins. Dasi, please take it away.
The lads grew up. Esau became a man who understood hunting, a man of the field. Jacob was a wholesome man living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his trappings, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
And here, thank you. And here the Torah is attempting to make sense of this thing that's going to be coming up, recurring in the story, where Isaac, the father, loves Esau, the son, and Rebekah loves Jacob. So it's kind of like two parents, two kids, and each has a favorite. But if you take a look at these verses, what are the clues? Why does Jacob prefer Esau or Esau? What is it about him that he loves? Now, again, if you look at the description, it says he became a man who understood hunting, a man of the field. And indeed, if you look at the Hebrew, Ish Yodea Tzayid, he knew Tzayid. Tzayid means hunting or trapping, actually. Ish Sadeh, a man of the field. Sadeh is field. And then the next verse says, Isaac loved Esav, Yahav, like Ahava. He loved him. Why? Ki tzayid befiv. Because he ate of his trappings, or literally because his trappings were, meaning Esau's trappings were in Isaac's mouth. What's the simple meaning of this?
He cooked for him.
He gave him food. So the father said, who do I like? Who do I love? Do I love the son who's all very studious, or the son who gives me good, good Southern barbecue? Southern, I don't know.
Bucky's?
Sorry. A kosher Bucky's. Yeah, listen, I just spent the weekend in Brooklyn. And literally Thursday night, so I went with my sons because they have this, we went for the Kinnos, the Chabad Rabbis Conference, the global conference, took place in New York, and they have a kids program for the boys. So I took Shaya and Ellie, my two sons that are of that age. So we land in Brooklyn, and we need food. So what do you do? So you go to the restaurants. We went to a place Thursday night called Holy Schnitzel. That's what it's called. Holy Schnitzel. Yeah, it's a real place. It's a whole chain, apparently. And so why did Yitzchak love Esau? Why did Isaac love Esau? On a simple level, ki tzayid befiv. Because this guy knew how to hunt. He got the beef, got the animals, and he gave his father food. That's it. But when you think about it a little bit more, are we really reducing our patriarch Isaac to a carnivore? Like, that's it? Now, I know what they say. What does it say? Well, I said I know, and then I can't remember the line. But it's kind of like the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. But are we trying to suggest that the way to a man's soul, and not just any man, but Isaac, Yitzchak Avinu, Isaac, Yitzchak, our patriarch, number 2 out of 3, the middle patriarch. Hold on.
Good question.
Who was the Brady Bunch? It was Greg. Who was the middle son? There was Greg. Who
Peter?
knows? Peter. You're suggesting that I don't even know where I was going with that. But are we suggesting really that Yitzchak Avinu, right? His whole game was like, who will feed me better? And that's the one that I love, and that's the one that I'll bless? Doesn't make any sense. Cannot mean literally that kitzayid befiv, that he loved him because his trapping was in his mouth. It can't mean that. And you know who doesn't accept that? Rashi. Now, we know from last year, just to mix years here, we know from last year that Rashi comes along when there's a need to explain the simple meaning of the text. Rashi jumps in right here and says, hold on, don't think that Yitzchak is reduced to someone who just sees meat and like, oh, meat, I like you. No meat, I don't like you. That's not what's going on. There's another meaning to this idea of trapping. And for this, we need to go back into the texts and read text number 2. You know what, Das, if you don't mind, please read text 2 because it's the Rashi on the verse that you just read.
Who understood hunting. Esav knew how to trap and deceive his father with his mouth and ask him, Father, how do we give maaser from salt and straw? His father thereby thought that he was scrupulous in his mitzvah observance.
My friends, this Rashi is highly significant. We will spend the entire session tonight trying to understand this Rashi. Okay? That's it. We are going to make sense of what this means. Let's break it down. Rashi says that the hunting we're talking about, the hunting and trapping, is not trapping and hunting animals, but it's rather trapping and hunting humans. No, this is not some weird cannibalistic ritual situation, but it's rather deception, straight up deception and fooling someone else. And who was it? It was Esau, the son, trapping, fooling, and tricking, and almost stealing the heart of his father. And how did he do it? Deception with his mouth. Kitzayid befiv, because his trappings was in his mouth, also can mean that he was deceptive with his mouth. And through that deception, he tricked his father into thinking that he was a tzaddik. Okay? And what did he say specifically? He says Rashi. Now, Rashi could have said anything. But here's what Rashi chooses to say. That the son, Esau, would ask the father, Father, how do we give meiser from salt and straw? Now, you might be wondering, well, what is that word meiser? Can anybody tell me what that word means?
It's the 10th.
10th, tithing. Tithing is a Jewish concept. It's a Torah concept. Meiser means, it's related to word Esther, which means 10. Meiser means a 10th. It's giving a 10th. And so Esav, the son, would ask his father, Dad, how do you tithe salt and straw? And his father says, my son, you're such a tzaddik, so righteous, so amazing, such nachas. You're asking about salt and straw, and it's so beautiful and so amazing, and I'm so touched, and you're the best, and you'll get the blessings. That's the story, right? If you would read Rashi, a simple reading of Rashi, that's what it is. Correct? Yes, everyone with me on this? Yes?
Explain why that was so esoteric.
Good. That's one of my questions. I have 5 questions. Almost the Passover Seder. I got one more. I got a bonus round. I got 5 questions, and that was one of them. But let's start from the beginning. Number 1, actually, you know what? Why should I ask the questions? You all ask the questions. Mom, that was a great question. Any more questions? What questions do you have on this text?
Wait, can you just repeat her question?
Yeah, my mom's question was, what would be the big deal about giving a 10th of your salt and straw? Like, why is that a profoundly spiritual or religious question that would tickle the fancy of his father? How do you give a 10th? I don't know. Just weigh it, divide it into 10. I mean, like, how do you give 10th of anything? Just figure it out. I don't know. Start counting the grains. I mean, you got to start somewhere. Give me more questions. That's a great question. More questions.
Did Yaakov never ask Yitzchak?
Oh, what about Jacob? Did Yaakov never ask questions from his father? It seems to imply that, oh, this guy, he loved him. Why? Because he would ask questions. And Jacob never asked. Yeah.
Well, maybe he loved him because he was so different from himself.
Saying he liked the contrast.
Yeah.
Okay, could be. But we need to see it.
Okay.
We need to see it here. I don't disagree with you, by the way. By the way, they say, it's opposites attract, right? So someone that is maybe of a quieter personality loves someone more outgoing, right? Until they realize, like, whoa, that's too much. I'm kidding, right? But and then someone more outgoing wants somebody a little bit more, maybe less outgoing. Yeah, not always, sometimes. So it could be that the Yitzchak, the Isaac that we know who never left Israel, right? We don't know much about him. He was a kind of maybe more introverted personality who dug wells. He has a son now who's outgoing, dashing. I made that up. I don't know. Great hair, again, making that up. But he's like a hunter and he's popular and he's got the ladies, I guess, whatever it is. So now, it's wow, love this guy. Could be. But let's see. Let's try to fit this into Rashi. What Rashi has more questions. Any question that you guys have? Okay. I'm gonna launch into my 5. Question number 1 from my list. Question number 1 from my list is, do we really believe that Yitzchak, Isaac, who, again, is our patriarch, number 2, our second patriarch, who is, as Kabbalah describes, a Merkava, a chariot of divine energy, that he was really deceived? That he didn't know who his son was? That he so was trapped by his son's questions that by the end of his life, the one person he wanted to bless was Esau, who we consider to be, based on our tradition that we have, was considered to be wicked? Is that what we really posit? That of all people, Isaac was fooled? Seems hard to imagine. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, think about this. If someone wants to trick someone into thinking that they're very righteous and pious, what do you think their approach would be? Give me kind of like a general approach that's specific enough to answer the question where I want you to go with this. How about that? Read my brain first. I'm kidding. Right? What do you think? What's the approach? Okay, I'm going to give you multiple choice. Should you A, ask questions, or B, do mitzvahs to try to convince someone that you're righteous? What do you think?
Mitzvahs.
Right? Wouldn't that be better if he was actually tithing the tithes? No. He wants to fool his father by asking questions about the mitzvah. Asking questions?
Does it not imply that he is doing it?
I don't know, but it could have. It should have said that. I know Rashi is trying to explain the idea of trapping him and tricking him and whatever. And it says, "Befilled with his mouth." But why not something along the lines of, "Dad, you know how many mitzvahs I did today? Wow, I did all the mitzvahs 3 times." Why not something like that? Why asking scholarly questions about a mitzvah? Why is he taking that approach? You understand my question? Mm-hmm. Why is he taking that approach? A question about how to do a mitzvah, as opposed to telling him, about the mitzvahs that he did, or doing it in front of him and thus convincing or, tricking his father into thinking that he's such a righteous guy. You with me on the question? Seems like a weird approach to take. I'm going to trick someone into thinking I'm someone who I'm not by asking questions about the observance of a mitzvah. It seems like a little bit of a weird approach. I mean, you could argue that it's not a weird approach, and I'm open to that, but I think it could also be argued the other way. It's a little bit of a weird approach. It's a little bit strange that he's asking questions about a mitzvah to demonstrate his piety when he could have just been feeding his father narratives about how many mitzvahs he did that day. Wow, I rode on my horse and I went to a town and I, rescued someone, and I could have made up stories like that.
Is that not like bragging though?
Is that bragging? I guess. Yeah. I mean, you say maybe he wouldn't have done that because he didn't want to brag. Could be. I hear that. All right. Anyway, it's a question. It's question number 2. Okay. Let's take a look at text number 4. the Yismach Moshe, Rav Moshe Teitelbaum, lived a few hundred years ago. So he also asks a few questions, and I think some of what I just shared in the question section, some of that is found in text number 4 as well. Mira, please read text number 4.
There is much to examine in these verses. How was Esau so connivingly wise as to deceive his saintly father? If he was someone who openly sat in tents and engaged in hunting secretly, there would have been room for error. But considering that he was a man of the field, exposed to all, then with what schemes and cunning did he deceive his father?
Pause here for a second. So his first question, a little bit slightly worded differently than my first question, is in general, how did he fool his father? I mean, come on, you're telling me that Yitzchak, Isaac didn't know? Come on. Everyone knew he was a hunter. Continue.
Also, the Midrash, which says that he would trap and deceive him with his words, is likewise puzzling. How exactly did he mislead him?
And again, you're telling me, he misled him because he was asking questions about how to tithe salt and straw. Like, okay, come on. That's, again, seems a little bit weird. All right, so these are the questions that are on the table. These are the questions that we need to address. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. I want to ask a few more questions. And this next question, question number 3, is not necessarily a question from the direct verses that we study, but it's a question that comes up in context. And the question is, when you look at it, turn your attention once again to text number 3. That's the one that talks about Isaac growing older and wishing to bless his son. So if you take a look at that, I'm going to reread this. When Isaac grew old, his eyesight faded. He could not see. And what does he do? He called Esau, his elder son, and said to him, "My son, here I am." Okay. Next verse. I'm old. I don't know when I'm going to die. And then get food for me, make it tasty. So verse number 4, bring it to me that I may eat, so that my soul will bless you before I die. Okay. And we said before that, why did he bless it? Because he was tricked by him and he thought he was righteous or whatever it was. Okay, great. I have a very simple and basic question. The implication of these verses, if you just read these verses, the implication is this father has one blessing to give, and it's going to be to his son Esau. And the reason is because, he convinced him, he tricked him and convinced him that he's righteous when he wasn't, and he fooled him, and that's why he wishes to give him the blessing. However, there is no implication that Jacob wasn't righteous, correct? There's every implication that he was righteous. There's no implication that Esau convinced Isaac, his father, that he was even more righteous than Jacob, correct? I feel like a lawyer, like asking setup questions. And yet, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense would have you believe I'm kidding. And yet, Isaac seems to wish to only bless Esau. Now you're telling me, why do you want to bless him? Because he convinced him he was righteous. Yeah, but Jacob was also righteous. So what does that mean? He convinced him that he's even more righteous than Jacob? Why would his deception of his father have been so strong, not just to put him on equal footing as Jacob, but way more deserving of the blessing than Jacob? You understand the question? It's the third question. Question number 1 is, how does he deceive him? Question number 2 is, how did he deceive him with these questions? Question 3 is, even if he did deceive him, why only a blessing for Esau and not for Jacob? Why only for Esau and not for Yaakov? He was also righteous, clearly. So why didn't he want to give him a blessing too? He only says to one of his sons, "Bring me food and I'll bless you." Why? That's the question number 3. Okay, now let's look at some more questions. Actually, no, let's read this inside text number 5. Toba, please read, if you will, text number 5.
We must understand from the story, it seems that Isaac didn't want to bless Jacob at all. Why? Was he unaware that Jacob was a wholesome man living in tents? Even if he thought Esau was righteous because he deceived his father with his mouth, we still don't find that he thought the opposite of Jacob.
Right. Was there any reason to believe that Jacob wasn't righteous, that he wouldn't want to bless him? Why only bless Esau? Even if it's Esau who convinced him that he was righteous, then it should have been he was also righteous, but also bless Jacob. That is question number 3. Now, I've saved the best for last because my next questions are going to be really fire, as the kids like to say. Fire in this context is a good thing. Just like goats became good, fire became good. I don't know. It's the magic of transformation. Welcome to 2025. So question number 4 is the one that my mom asked before and I mentioned before. And this is really a strong question. What's Esav's, like, what's the ace up his sleeve, as it were? Like, what's his, like, this question is going to totally bamboozle my dad to think that I am so righteous that he's going to think that I'm walking around with a halo all day and want to give me the blessing. And what is it? Dad? Yes, son. How do you tithe? How do you give 10% of salt and straw? Oh, my son, you're so amazing. Really? Bro doesn't know math. What do you mean, how do you give a tithe of salt and straw? As we asked before, just do it. How hard could it be? How hard could it possibly be? 10%. How am I supposed to count every grain of salt? You don't have to count every grain of salt. Put it on a scale or whatever they used back in the day, a balance scale, and just divide into 10 portions and do it. And straw, I don't know. If straw is what I know as straw, you can even count the pieces. I mean, it might be a lot, right? But it's possible. Straw is what, like, farmers put in their mouth, right? To be cool and such, right? So yeah, you can totally count straw. I'm going to say, Esav, nice try, bro. But you can count straw. What you talking about? How do you tithe straw? I don't even know your question. I don't even think that you're righteous. I just think that you're asking weird questions at this point. How do you tithe? Easy, simple, tithe. And you know what? You want to show your dad that you're so righteous? You're just showing him that you don't know math. Like, what's going on over there? Now, let's just carry on this with question number 5 on the same theme. Because question 5 takes it to the place of absurdity. Here's a fun fact that we may or may not know at this point. Guess what doesn't need to be tithed?
Grain and salt.
Yeah, salt and straw.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, salt and straw do not need to be tithed. Yeah. It's like asking, does my dad, can I eat this milk if it's not glatt kosher? And the dad's like, what are you saying? Glatt is with meat. This is milk. Like, you're at, like, oh, he's so righteous. No, he doesn't know the basics of the law. You don't walk away being impressed with your kid. You're like, oof, what happened? He was not paying attention to anything that we were teaching him. He's like, Dad, how do we tie the salt and straw? You don't. How about that? You do not. So, but instead he walks away thinking, oh my God, this is the one son out of 2 that I want to bless. It makes no sense. You know, like sometimes you read a story and you're like, yeah, it could be plausible. This story with Rashi's comment makes 0 sense. Far from being helpful, Rashi has sent us down this rabbit hole. I don't know if that's the right usage of the word, but down this path of absurdity where nothing makes sense. And, you know, if there was a talking rabbit and Alice herself, I would not be surprised at this point in this rabbit hole. It does not make sense what is happening here. Let's break this down into 5 questions. Question number 1, are you telling me that Isaac didn't really know who his son was? He was really unaware of his son, right? Question number 2, how do you trick someone with questions, right? Actions would be more tricky. Question number 3, what was question number 3? Question number 3 was, even if he was fooled, why no blessing for Yaakov? Why no blessing for Jacob? Question number 4, how hard is it to tithe salt and straw? What kind of question is that? And question number 5, the most absurd of all, is you're not even supposed to tithe them. So what's going on here? The whole story doesn't make sense. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Let's take a look at the sources to support my last few questions. Take a look at here we go. Wait. Text 6, the Mizrahi says, I'm going to read this one. He chose salt and straw and salt over all other items because they are exempt from Meiser, from tithing, both biblically and rabbinically. This stands in contrast to other items like vegetables, which, though exempt biblically from Meiser, tithing, are nevertheless obligated rabbinically. This biblical exemption is derived from the verse, 1/10 of grain, excluding vegetables or other things that are not grain, and thus it would be exempt. Now you could say, wow, he's so religious, is Esau, that even something that doesn't need to be tithed, he's ready to tithe. And you might say, well, that makes sense, but the Maskil David says that doesn't make sense to me. It's also a commentary on Rashi, text 7, and he writes the following. I'll read this one as well. What kind of question is it to ask, how does one tithe, whatever it is, blank, as if it's different from how one tithes anything else? So that's the fourth question I asked, like what's so profoundly difficult to tithe this over that? Moreover, with this question, he was showing himself to be an ignoramus who does not know the law that straw is exempt from tithing. This isn't cunning at all. On the contrary, his father would say that he doesn't pay attention in his studies. For if he did, he would know what's obligated and what's exempt, meaning far from tricking your father, you are convincing him that you wasted your tuition at the local Jewish day school. So that seems, hey, let's see, Ramon. So that seems to be problematic on all levels. And again, we have taken a simple story, I think a relatively simple story, and a simple Rashi's comment, and we have essentially, good to see you, blown it up. And that is the plan. The plan, Stan, was to blow it up, because it's only through blowing something up that you can actually rebuild it and make sense of it. This is going to be a paradigm shift, and what I'm about to share with you will completely transform everything you know about the story and the personalities involved, and also, really frankly, everything you know about salt and straw. So there's an extra bonus. You will never look at another bottle, jar, container, package of Morton salt, the same umbrella style, ever again. You guys ready? Let's do it. Okay, so here's the first thing you need to know. First thing you need to know is, and this is going to be a technical point, but it's the very important precursor to the rest of the ideas. And that is that the mitzvot that our patriarchs and matriarchs observed before Sinai, i.e. before the Torah was given, it resembled but did not perfectly replicate the mitzvot that we perform post-Sinai. I will say that again in different words. So we know that at Sinai, we were given the Torah, and that ultimately the Torah will contain 613 mitzvot. We also know that the patriarchs and the matriarchs, they observed Jewish practice even before the Torah was given. Now that might be like weird. That might sound weird. Like, who says? Well, it's not me that says this. Everywhere you look in the Talmud and the Midrash and the commentaries, the patriarchs and the matriarchs and pre-Sinai, they were observing Torah, they were observing mitzvot, they knew it, they had it. How did they know it? How did they study it? What did they have? Did they have a scroll of text? I have no idea. But what I do know is that they were plugged in to these ideas. However, and here is the huge caveat. However, the way they observed it was only roughly and approximately the way we observe it, but not precisely. Are you with me on that? They would not have kept a mitzvah necessarily with all of the particulars and nuances that we do it post-Sinai. So, for example, our mitzvah that we've been talking about, which is tithing. So we know that post-Sinai, the Torah, when I say post-Sinai, meaning the Torah says that you're supposed to tithe things that grow from the ground. Salt does not grow from the ground. It's a mineral of the earth, but it doesn't grow from the ground. So therefore, salt is exempt from tithing, as we just read in the text. Okay, but before Sinai, they didn't necessarily have or observe all of the nuances of the thing. They tithed, but they wouldn't necessarily say, tithe this, don't tithe that. Tithing is tithing. Now, how do I know this? I mean, it's easy to make up whatever you want, but how do we know this? We know this. This is like super clutch and super clear in Torah itself. And there's actually a biblical origin. One second. Here we go. Text number 8. Ramon, you are perfectly in time to read text 8. So please do this, because text 8 is the source that we need for this. This is just a little bit of context. We read about this a few weeks ago. There was a big regional war between an alliance of 4 kings and an alliance of 5 kings. And then Lot, Abraham's nephew, gets roped into the conflict, and he gets kidnapped, taken as a prisoner of war. And Avram gets schlepped into battle, and he lines with the 5 kings against the 4 kings, and he helps defeat the 4 kings. And then Melchizedek, who's the king of Shalem, So it says in the Torah, which is Jerusalem, comes to Abraham, and Abraham gives him a tribute. Take a look, text 8.
Melchizedek said, "And blessed be the Most High Almighty, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And Abraham gave him a tenth of everything.
Look at that. Look at that last line. Gave him a tenth. Abraham gave him a tenth. Who? Melchizedek. He gave him Meiser. He gave him tithing of what?
Everything.
You know what everything means?
The salt and the straw as well.
Everything means everything. Everything means everything. Oh, what? Tithing everything? Who tithes everything? Okay, again, before Sinai, before the Torah was canonized with all of its particulars, right? They had the values, but they didn't have necessarily all the finer nuances. So tithing was tithing. What do you tithe? You tithe everything. Whatever you got, give 10% back. I mean, not back to the store, but like, you give it to a good cause.
What's the Hebrew word for everything there?
Mikol.
Okay.
Kol is literally, kol means everything. Kol is like, that's a good translation. Everything is everything. Okay, so now stay with me. So it turns out, let's debunk a problem. So we said before that Esau, right? He would be showing his ignorance if he asked his father how to tithe salt and straw, because you don't tithe salt and straw, but you would have tithe salt and straw before Sinai. So we're in a good place right now with that piece of it, but we're still, that answers question 5 if you're paying attention. But question 4 still remains, which is, what's the difficulty in tithing salt and straw? You tithe everything. You just give 10%. Figure it out. Just, I don't know, weigh it, measure it, count it. Just give 10% of the thing. And so here we get to the key point that will change everything. And here it is. Salt and straw are unique in that, I'm going to use a boxing expression, Toba, for your benefit. Kidding. A boxing expression in that they punch above their weight. Let me explain. A little bit of salt not only goes a long way, but it is quite transformative to the thing you put it into. Think about a dish, not an actual plate. Think about a food dish that's lacking salt, and you eat it and you're like, doesn't even taste good. You put a little salt into it, now I can eat it. So how much salt did you put in? A drop. What's the value? What's the street value, market value of that salt? Nothing. A penny. Nothing. But how much did it enhance the food you put it into? Exponentially. You with me on this? Salt punches above its weight. It's a little thing that when you add it like, its quality far outweighs its quantity. Usually the quantity and the quality of a thing are somewhat commensurate. When it comes to salt, a little bit is transformative. Guess what? Straw is the same way. Now you're thinking, well, what do you put straw into? You and I would have no clue on this. But in ancient times, you know what they used straw for? They used straw for making bricks. They used straw. Now, in ancient times, bricks were just a phenomenon. It was like the internet. Bricks were revolutionary because until then you had to get stone, cut stone, figure it out. Now you can make bricks and you could build. It was unbelievable. What do? You take different, you take mud or clay or whatever it is, you put a little straw into it and it solidifies it. It makes it into a brick. That's how they used to make bricks with straw. So it turns out a little bit of straw and now you have a house that's solid. Without the straw, the whole thing collapses. With straw, you have something strong. So what's the point? A little bit of straw is not, the value of it is exponentially greater than the value of the straw itself. Let me break this down further. What's the value of a few pieces of straw? Nothing. What's the value of a few pieces of straw in the bricks of the home? Everything. All the value in the world. What's the value of a few grains of salt? Not much. What's the value of the few grains of salt on the steak or in the soup or whatever it is? Exponential. A restaurant that serves the soup without any salt, you know what's going to happen? The customer is going to say, give me a refund. And you know what that means? You lose whatever, 10, 20 bucks, whatever the soup is, right? You put the salt in, and suddenly now you can charge every penny of that amount. Why? It tastes good. Salt and straw punch above their weight. And so, listen, it's such a brilliant insight. It drives me crazy how good this is. Like, I'm actually disturbed by how amazingly profound this is. You ready? What is Esau's question? What is Esau's question? How do you assess the value of salt and straw when you're tithing? Do you measure it based on the individualized value of the salt and straw, irrespective of its utility, or do you take into account its utility? You with me on this? Right? Do you measure? Excuse me. Do you measure the value of salt and straw as like a few pennies? Or do you say, no, it's more than a few pennies. This is worth so much because look what it can do, look at its potential. Do you look at what it is, or do you look at what it contributes and what it does and what it could be? Do you look at the quantity or do you look at the quality? You with me on the question? It's unique. Most things, the value is the value. So it is what it is. It's like you have vegetables, you have 10 apples, you give 1 apple. But with salt, if I give 10% of the salt, does it really reflect the full value of the salt? The salt, the 10%, a little bit of salt really has much more value. So maybe I should give a cash equivalent of something greater. This profoundly impressed his father. Wow, my son is thinking about things not only on the surface, but a little bit deeper. That was like, wow, this kid is really analyzing, really perceptive, really thinking about Jewish law. You with me on this? That's a question. Why? I asked earlier, just asking a question about how to tithe. You seem like a fool. Kind of question, how do I give 10%? Just give 10%. No. This question is not, how do I divide, 100 into 10 parts? That wasn't his question. Yeah, his question wasn't about fractions. His question was about quantity and quality and potential and actual and understanding true value. When you look at one thing, but it really represents something else, that was what's going on. That's what he was considering. And so that's how he was able to fool his father. But the question still remains, why? Fine. So Isaac Yitzchak was convinced that my son is a genius, and he's so sensitive to the nuance of things and what they are and what they could be. And so he's asking very, very, very powerful questions. Great. Beautiful. He was impressed. But we still haven't, and we answered most of the questions, but we still didn't answer. That's how he was able to fool him with a question. And that's why it was about salt and straw specifically, because they punch above their weight. And that's why, even though at post-Sinai, you don't do it, but pre-Sinai, Abraham set the precedent that you do tithe everything, including salt and straw. So he's asking, how do you do it? Great. We've answered 4 out of 5 questions. The one question that remains is, but why not also want to bless your younger son, Jacob? Still doesn't explain why by the end of his life, he's like, you know who I want to bless? Esau. Why only Esau? Because he tricked him. So what about Jacob, who was righteous through and through? Why not bless him also? Okay. So for this, I need to bring you into another drama, another story that you might or might not know. And that is the final moments of Esau's life. How did he die? There's an unbelievable story that is told in multiple midrashic sources, as well as the Talmud. And the story goes like this. As we all know, Jacob ultimately moves to Egypt to be reunited with his son Joseph and the whole family, and everyone's living in Egypt. And that is where Jacob spends the final 17 years of his life. 17, the numerology, the Hebrew numerology of 17 is related to the word tov in Hebrew, which means good. Those were the 17 best years of Jacob's life. Okay? We're talking about Jacob now, not Isaac, right? Jacob dies in Egypt. And before he dies, he tells his son, Yosef, the following: promise to me that upon my passing, you will take my remains and bury me where? Back in Israel. Where? Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of Machpelah, the cave that we read about a few weeks ago that Abraham purchased from Ephron. Hachiti, Ephron the Hittite, for 400 silver coins as a burial plot for his wife Sarah. And the patriarchs are there and the matriarchs are there. It's the cave of the doubles. There's Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava, Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah. And at that point in time, who was buried there? Leah. Who is Leah? Leah was one of Jacob's wives. Jacob married two sisters, right? Rachel, Rachel and Leah. And Rachel was buried in Bethlehem, She was buried on the road. There was another story over there. But who was in the second to last spot? It was Leah. There was one spot left. So the whole procession, and there was a massive procession coming up from Egypt to Hebron, to bury Jacob in the final spot. And guess who's standing at the entrance of the cave? It's Esav, his twin brother. And he says, not a chance. You are not burying him here. There were two spots. Our parents and grandparents bequeathed us this as a burial plot. There were two spots, one for me, one for my brother. My brother gave away his spot to his wife, Leah. The last spot is mine. Are you with me on this? Adam and Eve, Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, 3 couples, 8 spots total, 6, right? Number 7, buried there, number 7 was Leah, and Esav says, not happening. So what happens? There's a standoff. It's very tense. And Esav is ready to battle for this. He's ready literally to battle for this. He's like, you're not burying my brother here. It's not his, he lost his spot. Jacob's family says, you're wrong. It's not yours. When you sold the birthright, listen to this. When you sold remember he sold the birthright in this week's Torah portion, right? When you sold the birthright for a bunch of beans, for lentils, you also sold your plot. And we have the document to prove it. Where was the document? Back in Egypt. And now they're in Israel. Now, this is before fax machines, before, WhatsApp, before text messages. Yeah, you can't just digitally send this image. So what happens? What happens is they need someone to go literally and fetch it and bring it back. So who do they send? Says the Gemara and the Medrash, etc. They sent Naphtali. Who was Naphtali? One of the 12 sons, one of the 12 tribes, Naphtali. Naphtali ayel shlucha. He was swift as a deer, and physically he was fast, and so he was the runner. So they said to Naphtali, "Go get the contract, get the document so that we can prove to Uncle Esau to move out of the way, so we can bury Dad." Okay, so he has to go back. Reminds me of the time I was a counselor in Long Beach, California, Huntington Beach, California, and we went down to, in honor of 4th of July, we're a better place to go than Tijuana, Mexico. So we went to Tijuana for the weekend. It was a long weekend. Camp was off that weekend. And we wanted to spend the actual 4th of July Mission Beach in San Diego to watch the fireworks. And so we're driving up from Tijuana, and in the car, we had a bunch of guys, including a friend of mine who's from Australia. And in what's it called again? At the border, going back into the U.S., they said, "What's your nationality?" America, America, America. Australia, where's your papers? Passport.
Uh-oh.
Guess who didn't realize that he would need a passport upon returning to the U.S.? Our Australian friend. So me and another friend, we left him, drove back to Long Beach, back down to the border to rescue him and break him out. We were the Naphtali. We were the Naphtali in that story. So Naphtali runs to get the documents to come back. But in the meantime, someone was very concerned. And his name was Chushim. Chushim was the son of Dan. One of the 12 sons was Dan. And his son, a grandson of Jacob, was chushim. Chushim was deaf. And he didn't understand what was happening. All he understood was that his grandfather was waiting to be buried, and there's this guy, Esav, who's blocking his grandfather, and that was not cool. And what he did was he took matters into his own hand, and I don't know what he used, but he used an implement, and he struck Esav, who again would have been his great uncle, right? His grandfather's brother, and he struck him and he killed him, but he hit him so hard, says the Medrash in the Talmud, that Esav's head separated from his body. This is gory, separated from his body and rolled into the cave of Machpelah and stopped rolling in the lap, as it were, of his father Isaac. And says the Medrash and the Talmud that Esav's head is buried in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, in the cave of Machpelah. And then Jacob got the final spot, and Esav was buried there as well. And there had been a tradition that they would both die on the same day, and indeed they did. Jacob passed away how he passed away, and Esau passed away through this story. And Kabbalah comes along and asks the simple question, what in the world is happening here? And what is the significance of the fact that Esav's head is buried in the cave, and what does it mean? And Kabbalah gives an incredible answer. And you know what that answer is? What does it mean that his head was buried there and not his body? What's the difference between head and body? Here we go. Head represents the source. The body is the implementation. The head says, let's go, and then the feet actually go. The head says, let's move our fingers, and then the fingers follow. Sometimes there's a disconnect between the head and the body. Spiritually speaking, you know what that looks like? That looks like a guy like Esav, who has so much potential, so much greatness, so much spiritual energy, and yet in reality can't get his act together. The head and the body are not on the same page. You with me on this? The head represents spirituality and source, right? And connection, and the body remained disconnected. And so which one ends up in the cave? Which one ends up being buried in that holy space in the lap of his father, of his beloved father Isaac? Which part of Esav? Only his head, representing his soul, representing his source, but not his body. His body, he didn't behave. But he had all the potential in the world. What was Esav's question to his father? How do you measure the value of salt and straw? You understand the question? How do you measure the value of salt and straw? Do you look at what it is now, or do you look at what it could be? You see the difference? Do you look at what straw is, or what pieces of straw that are useless, or do you look at what it could be? Bricks, salt. Do you look at what it is, just a few grains on the floor, or do you look at what it could be, an enhancer, literally what makes food food? That's the question. How do you understand what salt and straw is? Do you look at what it is or what it could be? Understand what was happening here? Esav goes to his father and says, Father, Abba, right? Tati. He says, don't judge me by who I am. Judge me by who I could be. Believe in me. Believe in me even if I don't believe in myself. His question to his father about salt and straw was less a technical question about how to tie salt and straw, and more of a request, don't give up on me. Because even though I look small, in practice, in potential, I can punch above my weight, my current weight. I can accomplish great things even if I don't look great right now. Like salt and straw that looks puny and looks small, but given the right circumstance, given the right context, magnifies exponentially into greatness. I can also be like that, Father, he says. And so by the end of his life, Isaac says, well, who do I need to bless? Who needs the blessing? Who needs that boost? Who needs to know that I believe in them? Not Jacob, Yaakov, he's already good. I asked the question, even if somehow Esav convinced his father that he was righteous, why only give a blessing to Esav? because he's the only one that needed it. Because he's the one that needed it. He's the one that needed the affirmation. He's the one that needed his father's love. He's the one that needed to see himself as someone who believed in him saw him. Sometimes we need to see ourselves through the eyes of others. Sometimes we need to believe in ourselves like others might believe in us. And so his question was about salt and straw, but it was really about himself. Can I climb outside of my current status? Can I be greater than my current manifestation of who I am? Does this make sense? And the answer is yes. You are like salt and you are like straw, and you can be valued greater than your current condition. Given the right context, given the right circumstances, you can, your power, your influence, your greatness, your spirituality can be exponentially greater. And I believe that you can achieve it. His question was not just a question, it was a statement, it was a request, asking himself, asking his father, believe in me. I need to believe in myself, etc. And his father affirmed that by saying at the end of his life, yes, I believe in you, and I will give you a blessing to try to bring that out. Now, why is it that Jacob nonetheless took the blessings? That will have to leave for Sunday mornings. That we leave for Sunday mornings. That's our Sunday morning class. And we're not really going to give a satisfying answer today. Today, it's really more about the question. Esav's question and his father's response with, yes, I do want to give you a blessing. How the story actually turned out, we have to leave that for another conversation, another class. But you know what the lesson, you know what the moral of the story is? How do we see ourselves? It's a question we need to ask. How do I see myself? Do I look at myself and my value only as I exist currently, or do I look at myself and my value as my potential is? Do I look at myself as a small human being that has accomplished X, Y, and Z? You know, that this is who I am, kind of shrinking ourselves into our current paradigm, into our current, scenario, or do we look at ourselves as the person that we were destined to be, that we can be, and then we live into that? So who is the I that judges self? That's the question. And then when we put that question to how we view others, the question likewise becomes very poignant. How do I see others? Do I judge others as they are, or do I look at others and believe in them to be what they can be? And Judaism has a clear answer on this. We are encouraged to look beyond the surface, to look at the truth, not of what a person is currently, but who they can be. Isaac, the father, was so impressed with his son, who was able to look at some grains of salt and say, Dad, how do we tithe these? How do we assess their value? Yeah, it's like evaluation, right? It's like assessments. How do we assess the value of salt and straw? Do we look at it as salt and straw or as food and bricks? Do we look at Esav as Esav? Wow, what a waste. Or as Esav, the guy who has this incredible spiritual potential that's still in his head, still in his soul. But like, if it only was able to manifest, this guy could change the world. Didn't happen. But do we look at that and try to bring that out like Isaac tried with the blessing? Do we look at ourselves and only aim as high as we're currently reaching, or do we aim for higher? Do we look at others and judge them by where they are or where they could be? These are questions that only we can answer. But the Torah reminds us to always look at straw as something greater. Salt is something greater, straw is something greater. And with that perspective, we can and we will do great things. It only happens when you believe in yourself, or when you believe in others. Probably the most poignant example is in education, parenting or education. Think about it. A teacher that walks in and says, this is the misfit class. Like, these kids are never going to learn. Guess what? They're not going to learn. If you walk in and you say, like, I see potential here. These kids, it doesn't matter that last year they didn't learn a word, right? This year, I can work with this. You will make that happen. If you're the educator, they will learn. It's all about believing in the other. So may we believe in ourselves, believe in the other. May we believe in our inner Esav and our fellow Esavs as much as Isaac believed in his son. And unlike that story, may we bring out that potential into actualization and thereby bring more light into the world and make the world a better place until the time of the ultimate redemption, the coming of Mashiach. May be speed in our days, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Make sense? Yes. All right. Good. Good, good, good. Any questions or comments? All right.
That was a really nice twist.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I personally cannot tell you how much I love this class and this lesson. Salt and it's like a Rashi. He asked his father about salt and straw. Of all the random things, not so random. Not so random at all. He was like asking his father, do you believe in me? And by the way, every child wants to know that question for the parent. Do you believe in me?
So Rebecca kind of like interfered.
The only question is, why did Rebecca mess it up?
Right, like it's kind of like that makes it seem like
She's like, yeah, but I don't believe in you. Yeah. I like what was going on there. So again, we presented that side of the story so well. Now the other half of the story doesn't still well.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'll take this half. This weekend, join us. Shabbat, if you can make it. Saturday morning, women's only class. It's called Lift Your Life. Kabbalistic teachings that will elevate your daily reality. It's a Rosh Chodesh. Thursday is Rosh Chodesh. Friday, the mullet is Thursday. Friday is Rosh Chodesh. So we're doing it on Saturday, Shabbat morning. The date is November 22nd, 10:30 a.m. right here at CBT, right here in the social hall. Class given by Mrs. Dasi New. It's a class for women, by women. I just put out the food. That's my role. First class is on the energy of the month, which is the month of Kislev. That's at the upcoming month. The topic is called Sublimated Slumber, Harnessing the Secrets of Sleep. Now the class will not put you to sleep. Why were you?
When I first saw it,
you were
like,
sublimating.
Yes, and then you're like, oh, women's only. I'm like, oh,
yeah. So if you thought that a sound machine, one of those like white noise things puts you to sleep, just wait till this class. I'm kidding. This class will not put you to sleep, but it will transform your spiritual perspective on the significance of sleep. Join us 10:30. We have a nice breakfast. It's a really beautiful group of women. If you've never joined, consider joining. If this doesn't apply to you, then share it with somebody who it does apply to. And invite them to join. More information on our website. The Torah Center ATL.org is the website /RCS. Rosh Chodesh Society, RCS. That is the direct link, and you can find more information and join. And I think that's it for tonight. Okay. I always like sharing announcements. I have so much exciting stuff brewing. It's unbelievable. New classes, new events, big stuff coming up. So stay tuned. Can't release stuff yet until it's fully baked, but stay tuned for information as it rolls out over the next week or two. Which one? Remind me.
Talking about meditation.
Oh, yes. In the works. We got some prayer stuff in the works. We got a lot of cool things that are upcoming. Stay tuned for more information as it breaks. Okay, I think that's it. If there's no more questions, we'll close out. All right, good to see you all. Laila Tov. Kabbalah meeting tomorrow for those that join. All about Kabbalah of time, the significance of time. Okay, we'll see you guys. Good night, everybody. Thanks for